From the ITS studios, it's the Josh and Josh Show.
Hi, I'm Joshua Brown, a Semantic Workflow engineer and a member of the ITS Workflow team.
And I'm Josh Bernson, the team lead of the ITS Workflow team. Today we'd like to introduce you to Semantic Workflow.
In this video, we'd like to discuss what is Semantic Workflow, how do you get Semantic Workflow, and what the ITS Workflow team has done with Semantic Workflow. Josh, we have a dedicated workflow team. Can you tell us a little bit about some process we've been doing right now?
Sure. One of our more interesting processes is we currently have an ITS engineer cloning process in beta. In fact, let's take the opportunity to have one of our clones answer our first question. What is workflow? Semantic, wait a second. I'm a clone and I'm still in beta? Am I missing something? Semantic Workflow is a graphical application development platform. It's kind of like mixing Visio in a programming language. It's used to automate business processes and to connect many of Semantic's applications. It's web-based, so your users don't need a client to connect to it. They just need a web browser. It works well to create your own processes as well as modify many of the pre-built processes. And it compares to a lot of other BPM software like Appian and Microsoft Orchestrator. But it's actually a lot more powerful than those other tools.
Well, that beta test went really well. Was that the Model T1000?
That was our early release candidate. I'm not so sure about it anymore. What was that? Let's answer the next question. Where do I get Workflow? Workflow is part of the Semantic management platform. It can also be installed separately. It's made up of a series of parts. Josh, let's talk a little bit about the piece that allows you to create workflow projects.
Well, that's considered the workflow manager, and that's where we would both create new projects and open existing projects. Those could be existing projects that you've gotten from Symantec or from a partner like us, and those can be open on any workflow system as long as we have the right version and everything.
Okay, so that's where the projects are held. Are there pieces in there that allow you to work on the projects themselves?
Yes, and that's called the Workflow Designer. The Workflow Designer is where we actually use the framework, and we're actually doing the development and everything, and that's where we use the components and build the actual process.
So that's our graphic development platform.
Yes, so that's the graphic development platform. And then beyond that, we also have the process manager. The process manager is a piece where it's a web portal, and you can go and access it and do the task and pieces like that. In your experience, is that people use that very much?
Yeah, it's growing in popularity. The process manager is still fairly new. So there are a lot of people who have built projects in the past that haven't taken advantage of it, but we're starting to see people really take advantage of it now. It allows you to work tasks, complete tasks, reassign them, keep a history of what's going on in your processes, run reports. So it can be very valuable for long-term projects. Now
let me interrupt for a second, because I know at one point Semantic Workflow wasn't used that much by a lot of people because it was sold on a license you had to buy a server license, you had to buy the designer license. Has that changed in the last years?
Yes, good question. It is true that when Semantic Workflow was originally released, it was sold on a per client, per server basis, and that has changed quite a bit. Now it is considered an entitled license as long as you're a Semantic Enterprise customer.
So wait, if I'm a Semantic Enterprise customer, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I still have to do something to get this?
So you do need to own one of many Semantic products that includes it. Any of the SMP-based products include it. Many of the other ones do now too. And once you own those, you automatically have Workflow, and you have an unlimited license to Workflow. So you likely have Workflow already, and you may have some ideas of projects you'd like to work on. But let us give you a few examples of business processes we've automated. Josh, can you give me an example of a project you worked on recently?
Yes, we designed and implemented a personnel change request process. So if a person in an organization was terminating an employee or replacing an employee, they would work this process.
What type of organization uses that?
Well, this was for a healthcare organization, a rather large hospital.
Okay. Can you give me an idea of some of the project types that you used in that project?
Yeah, so that project was using both a web form, a bunch of web forms. So I think there was like 3 or 4 a workflow, and I think it also had probably some decision-only projects where we created web services.
So it was mostly a front-end project, a user interface project.
Yeah, so a user would come to the web form, they would put in their request, and then it would send to someone and they would do an approval. They would also work on, like, it would go through the cost centers and determine who the managers are, and then it could do approvals based on that.
What type of integration did it have with the company's own systems?
Well, it integrated with Active Directory, and that also stored a lot of its information in a SQL database, so they could run reports and get information back on that.
Were there any other workflow pieces that were special to that project?
Well, we were able to integrate with Process Manager so that the managers who were approving tasks could go in there and they could look up their tasks, and if they had multiple tasks, they could do it all in one location. It also allowed us to create some reports and have a front end for their search form, which we created within a web form project type.
Well, that sounds like a really good example of a request approval process, which is a fairly common project for workflow.
Yeah, so that's a project I've done. What's a project that you could tell us about that you've done?
I can give a good example of one that's quite a bit different than yours. It was an automation of software release creation. So if you think about a software delivery process, the process of getting software out to computers is fairly automated these days. There's many ways to do that automatically. But you've got to get the software into the process first. You've got to take it from its package state or its raw installer state and bring it into the software delivery system. And so we automated that process.
And what kind of organization was that done for?
This is actually a fairly common request for a lot of organizations, but in this particular case, we were dealing with a medical organization that was really interested in automating everything in the background possible.
And were there any like integrations or portions or pieces that you had to create to make this project work?
Yeah, because it was all back end, we really weren't interested in providing UIs to the end users. We wanted this to run on its own in the background. So as far as pieces goes, we relied heavily on integration and decision-only projects. Decision-only is to move the data on the back end with no user interface, and integrations to connect to the customer's own databases where they kept records of all of these packages.
Is there any other, examples of projects that we could probably tell them about?
Sure. A common request is a software-hardware request. The idea that a user comes in, requests software or hardware, and the system automatically delivers it to them, which is almost an extension of the process that I just described.
Yeah, we also have worked with security products, especially some Semantic security products to create remediation and routing. There isn't routing to tell who to notify who to work an incident that happens in the security system. So there's been requests to have a routing sort of engine scheduled in the front end.
Yeah, notification is a big deal. Workflow is very good at notification, and if we have a source and a destination, we can pull data, send it to the end users, tell them what's going on. Another thing that Workflow is very good at, as we've already hinted at, is a request approval. And a good example of that is requesting virtual machines. More and more environments are going completely virtual, and that can put a lot of strain on a small IT staff. So the idea that a user could request a virtual machine with all the information and have it be completely automated, even creating the machine and delivering the credentials back to the end user, that's becoming a very popular process.
You know, and also with the changing of OSs and going from XP to Windows 7, we've also created processes to do changing of that OS, to actually use the inventory in an computer inventory system, look at the inventory on the computer and see if it's ready for the upgrade, and then work a process to actually do that upgrade.
Yep, very good example.
Well, hopefully the project examples we just talked about spark some ideas of some business processes you might want to automate. The ITS Workflow team is available for knowledge transfer and for project assessment. Josh, is there other ways you think we could help customers?
Sure. We can help kickstart a project, or we can build a process for you end to end. Hold on a second. The security team keeps sending these Attack of the Clones. I kept telling them not to watch sci-fi movies down there. Let me go deal with this.
Well, since Josh is most likely dealing with a clone issue, I want to thank you for watching this video. And if you want to contact us on any type of workflow process you want to automate, feel free. Thank you.
Those guys think they're so funny, creating all of us clones. I was pretty sure that was illegal. I know, I'll give them so many tasks to do that they can't possibly create any more of us. Let's see here. Create some videos on the workflow manager, maybe a video on the workflow process manager. Videos for all those projects they created. That'll keep them busy for a while. Wait a second. Why can't I assign any of these tasks to them? I can only assign it to us clones. This isn't fair.
From the ITS studios, it's the Josh and Josh Show.